Everyone, I am Blake from Bourbonr.com. This is the third episode of Bourbonr Live. Tonight, I am joined with David Jennings from Rarebird 101. You've probably seen him on a bunch of different places. He's been on podcasts. He has his own blog post. He's got some private pics out there that have become very popular, but kind of just what do we say? Wild turkey enthusiast, wild turkey nerd, super fan. Cool. And so if you're familiar with these shows, it's just kind of flexible. There's the format is I try to do a little bit of review, a little bit of just general news conversation, and I thought it'd be great to have David on to kind of talk about just wild turkey. And when we were kind of going through the list, and he sent me kind of an outline of some ideas and topics. I forgot how much wild turkey did this year. So it's really incredible to look back. And, aside from it just being their, Jimmy and Eddie and Bruce celebrating 101 years of let's see, what do we call it? 10 years service in the industry. It's just, they put out a lot of new releases. So we're going to talk about those, but go ahead and just kind of introduce yourself, tell everyone where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Great. Okay. Well, for those of you that aren't familiar, I'm David, and I have a blog called Rarebird 101. And it's basically a wild turkey enthusiast site. Sorry. And it's mostly reviews, but there's some articles on there and some links to some helpful information like a timeline, how to decode bottle codes. And I have a Instagram account at Rarebird101, a Twitter at rbird101. And if you have any questions about wild turkey, send me an email or a direct message, and I'll be happy to help you.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's kind of what I love about it is it's, there's a lot of great bourbon out there, but it's kind of even some of these major distilleries and even some of the smaller ones. Cause the wild turkey isn't, I don't even know if they're in the top 3 producers right now. I think it may be Beam, Heaven Hill, and then wild turkey, if I'm not mistaken, but
they're around that area. That's right.
Yeah. But you can take a really deep dive into this brand and really get into it, have an entire blog, and a lot of interesting stuff comes out of it. I feel like I follow the industry very closely, but then I read some of your posts and I'm like, oh my word, I never even realized that. That's awesome. So let's just kind of talk about some of the releases we've seen from wild turkey this year. The big one being not the big one, but the one that probably got the most mainstream attention was the Matthew McConaughey release with Longbranch. Yeah. So that one, as an enthusiast, is it kind of like seeing your favorite band sign with a major label and selling out, or is it like, hey, great, he can push bourbon to heights and places it otherwise wouldn't make it?
Well, when it first was announced that he was going to be the creative director, we're talking about Matthew McConaughey here. I watched the YouTube video that he made, the promotional video, and I'll be honest with you, I was in the middle of watching. I'm like, man, I'm gonna go pour some wild turkey.
I think a lot of people had that reaction. Yeah.
And so right off the bat, I was like, this guy's, he seems to be, true here, and so I was on board with it. It did not seem like and nothing against the other celebrities that endorse their products. He just seemed to be a little bit more involved. It seemed to be a little bit more genuine. Yeah. Okay. And I don't know personally. I'm not involved on that side, but that's the way it appeared to me. And so I was like, okay, well, let's see where this goes. And they said he was going to have his own expression. Well, it took a long time to get it to market, which I thought was kind of a good sign because they could have slapped his name on anything. They could have just taken 101, diluted it down to 86 or something, threw it in a bottle, put his face on it, throw it out there, and people probably would have bought it. Maybe not the enthusiast crowd, but instead they took their time with it. He worked with Jimmy, he worked with Eddie, samples back and forth, trying to narrow down something that he wanted, but something that Eddie and Jimmy were comfortable putting, their name on as well. And so by the time Longbranch came out, it's straight. It's a straight bourbon. It's not age dated, but it has 8-year stocks in it. And, it had this special filtration, the Texas Mesquite, which honestly didn't really add much in my opinion. I was expecting more of that, but all in all, in a good bottle design, I thought it was an excellent bottle design. All in all, a pretty solid release. And honestly, it wasn't meant for you and me. It wasn't meant for the enthusiast crowd. It was meant for the folks that like to drink Gentleman Jack or Basil Hayden's, these type of pours. And I think that it did really well with that demographic, honestly. And as far as Matthew McConaughey in general, I think that's the same thing. He is there to bring in a wider audience outside of the typical, wild turkey consumer. And I think that he's actually doing a good job with it. And Longbranch is just one example. I think the other example is, like I mentioned before, his presence on the media. His productions are excellent. And I think he's doing a good job. I mean, he's not getting in our business. He's not messing with the enthusiast stuff. Your mic went out on us.
Yeah. I tried to.
Yeah, it's still nothing there, Blake. Do you want me to just roll for a little bit? Okay. All right. So we went from Longbranch coming out to earlier in the year. And another thing that I think I should mention that was excellent for the first part of the year was these barrel picks started coming out in the early part of the year. And they were just a cut above a lot of the barrel picks that I was finding in 2016. And so as we got into, like, say, summertime, some of these picks, particularly from Rickhouse B, Rickhouse D, these and even like K, these were just something just totally different from the average. Not that what was coming out a year or two before was subpar, no way, but this was just another level. And the bar was set really high. So the next thing was then, I believe, Revival, and then 2002. But I don't know if you want me to carry into that if your mic's working now.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you now.
Cool. No, I think that's a perfect lead in. And I kind of want to mention the store picks as well, because, for the longest time, nobody really followed warehouses like they did with Four Roses. Four Roses, it's like, oh, what corner of what warehouse did you get? And it got really in depth. But
it's recipe oriented. People chase the recipes.
Especially the recipe too. But it seemed like just within this last year, it's like, hey man, you got any of that warehouse E or I'm not even that up to speed on all of it with Wild Turkey in the Russell's private picks, but I had a few of them, and it's like, man, this brings back to some memories of just some of those great barrel picks I would get from Four Roses early on that got me really excited of, like, okay, there's this saving grace of I don't have to chase everything.
That's right.
So when you taste some of those, that's the nice part about it.
Yeah, it's. I know that you had an article, a few months back about the not liking single barrels, and I know where you're coming from, because there are some other single barrels that I've been disappointed with in the past. Like Henry McKenna is a hit or miss a lot for me. I know people are going to just hate me for saying that I don't particularly like a lot of the Henry McKenna bottled and bonds, but I've had a few that were awesome, and I've had some that just like, this is getting close to like Evan Williams bottled and bond or something. So, so with Russell's Reserve this year, a lot of them coming from B and D, and like I mentioned, K and H as well. Particularly B, and Bruce explained why B is so unique on the Dad's Drinking Bourbon podcast, being so close together in Tyrone, there to the distillery, and the buildings are real close, and there's this nice airflow there that's not, out there in some of the rick houses that are just sitting out there in the open. And also he said, B is left alone, so it's not tampered with. People aren't walking in and out touring it like they are A. So if you can find some picks from B, I think you'll be quite impressed.
That's always the really interesting part to me, is just, those ancillary things that you don't think matter at all.
Right.
Could end up making a big difference over, we talk about a fraction of a difference, but over a 10-year period or, 8-year period, that does play a difference. And,
Yeah.
the circulation appears to be a pretty big factor in some of the
Yeah,
flavor.
I have a lot of theories of my own too. I'm thinking, B is a very old rick house. It's about as old as A. So you're talking about pre-1900s. And, you've got some very old wood in there that has been exposed to fumes for well over 100 years now. And you've got to wonder if all that's soaking in there and just staying in that little airflow for all those, years, does that play a role? Because I've seen where, people hang hams and will it and stuff like that. So there's things happening in the air. And it makes you wonder that, is a rick house just built going to have the same air as a rick house 100 years later?
It could be like, seasoning a cast iron skillet.
Right.
Maybe that.
Exactly.
I've never really had that thought, but I don't know. I still just think there's a lot of mystery to it. And that's kind of the fun part about like the warehouse exit, Buffalo Trace, where yes, it is kind of like a marketing thing. But I think they're really trying to nail down what it is that makes it different, because, if you talk to like an Eddie or someone, they say, yeah, B is a little bit different. And, they know it's the same bourbon going in. The trees can play a role, but no, that's always interesting. And
it is.
That's where I think they do a good job of kind of bringing everyone together. We talk about Longbranch, then we can talk about the air circulation in Warehouse B, and it's all under the Wild Turkey roof. It's all under that same umbrella.
Yeah, every rick house is different. It's like one recipe with all these different profiles. So, and then you have the floors are a factor as well, and so they're not moving barrels around; they just stay where they stay. And it's I think for special things they move them around, obviously. Like Master's Keep 17 was moved around several times, mostly out of necessity. But there's so many profiles coming from one recipe just because of where it sits, just because of where it sits.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, I think, to a lot of new drinkers. They see all these different brands and it's like, it's the same ingredients, just a different cake. And you can taste it, and you taste the difference. So let's talk about a few of the other ones, because Revival is one that I actually thought was pretty good. I've been a pretty big fan of the Master Keep lineup, even though it hasn't drawn a ton of attention. And then the Revival, what's Revival? Is it sherry?
Oloroso sherry finished. Eddie went and found some 20-year-old barrels. Oloroso sherry. He went to Spain and brought them back, and aged this 12 to 15-year Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey from Wild Turkey. I don't know which rick houses he pulled from, but they set in the 20-year-old cask for some finishing, and they didn't stay in there a whole long time. And he was very careful about it, tasting them frequently. And I think he pulled it right at the perfect time, because it's not over sherried. It still tastes like Wild Turkey, but it tastes like sherried bourbon in a good way.
And that's where I thought it did have a good balance, because you get some of those and it's like, man, am I drinking a glass of sherry and somebody dropped a shot like it's a Jaeger bomb in here or something? It was some kind of weird, but it was pretty subtle. So I thought that was good. Another big one, which I'm going to get you to talk about because I haven't even tried it yet, is the 2002. Which 1998 is still probably 98 is probably top 5 whiskeys for me.
98 was great.
But the 2002 was it 15 years, I believe.
Yes, that's right. 15 years, almost 16. Yeah, it was pulled from a particular set of rick houses off-site in Camp Nelson, which is it's a national cemetery, but they have rick houses there that Wild Turkey acquired. And I believe they acquired them in the early 2000s. Obviously, if it's 2002, okay, so they had to be sitting there since 2002. So, but I don't think it was much, earlier than that. I could be wrong. But this set of rick houses is very different than Tyrone. The profile is a lot spicier. It has a lot more pepper to it. People call it the Camp Nelson prickle. because it has this really, really, you feel it more than you taste it. It has a very, very strong prickle to it. And some folks probably aren't a big fan of it. I like it if the time is right. If I'm really looking for that extra spice, and I want a little bit drier of a bourbon, then I'll go for the Camp Nelson. But that's where 2002 was pulled from. And the nose on 2002 is amazing to me. I think that the nose is very complex. It's very rich. It's very deep. And you get a lot of balanced elements there. But when you hit the palate, and don't get me wrong, it's still an excellent whiskey. It just, there's a little bit of a step down from the nose. And then the finish, again, is a little bit of a step down. All in all, fantastic barrel strength, well, aged Wild Turkey bourbon. But not 1998. It's just not 1998. Yeah. And honestly, it's not revival. I know a lot of people, have voiced some, opinions of that. Like, you picked revival and, you left 2002 off your best of list. And, and I haven't been given too hard of a time, but, people have mentioned it to me. And that's because I think that 2002, even though it was great, it just didn't have that special something where it felt like it was like meticulously crafted. Like Revival just had that meticulous craft to it. And then a lot of the other best ofs on my list ended up being single barrels that I thought were just phenomenal, like the Single Cask Nation 10-year from K. That was just amazing.
Yeah. So, and that was, what was that part of a Whiskey Jubilee, or that was just one of their other releases?
One of their other releases. So they had a 2017 Jubilee. That was Wild Turkey last year. That was from G, I believe. Okay. And then this year they released a D and a K earlier in the year, a Rickhouse D and a Rickhouse K. And the K came from a reject barrel. So it tastes very different. It tastes like Four Roses. It's like a Hawaiian punch, kind of Four Roses-y, but it has a funk to it, like kind of like reminiscent of the old Wild Turkey funk. So it's very interesting pour. But then just a few, I guess it was just a month or two ago, they came out and said, hey, we've got this Rickhouse K-Pick that we actually got a year ago by mistake. They were supposed to get another barrel that they picked, and Wild Turkey sent them a different one in error. Okay. And they were like, well, we'll take it. But they tasted it and they were like, yeah, this isn't, what we want to put our name on right now. So they kept it in their own warehouse. They actually let it age another year in their own warehouse. And then they tasted it routinely. And then when it hit the spot that they wanted, then they dumped it. So it actually it's like 9 years at Wild Turkey and a year at this warehouse, I believe, in California. Yeah. And it's awesome, man. It's heavy chocolate and smoke and horehound candy and licorice. I mean, it's got all these rich, if you like an earthy bourbon, you'd be a big fan of it. And non-chill filtered, barrel strength. It's just, it's kind of like the dream whiskey. But and it's about the closest you're going to get to a 12, people love 12-year Wild Turkey, the classic 112. So it's about the closest you're going to get to a 12-year Wild Turkey right now. And Revival's 12-year, but it's finished, and then the 2002 was more of a little bit more aged, and it had that Camp Nelson profile. So anyhow, I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, that's that is kind of a cool thing that I like that Wild Turkey does, is you see a few of these. I think Boutique Whiskey has one too, but it's kind of like a private label Wild Turkey, and they're okay with people saying that it is Wild Turkey. You see a few that it's, we had to sign a non-disclosure, but the Wild Turkey seems to let a few people do it and kind of celebrate what it is. So that's really fun. Ian Andrews asked a question about if you could describe the funk that you taste in Wild Turkey. He says, I think he meant quite familiar with rum and strong funks, smells grass butter, even overripe earth. We may want to save that answer
for when we do the tasting. Yeah, that'd be fine.
For the tasting.
Okay. All right.
But just to put that in the back of your mind, I know you probably have your go-to answer, and I'm pretty sure I've read your go-to answer before too. So, but I'll weigh in on that as well.
All right.
But so let's see. Aside from those, any other big releases from 2018 that you think we should talk about?
As far as big releases, no. I mean, there were some, like I said, we've gone over the single barrel, releases that have been there. And the only other thing I should probably mention is that there are good things coming from Wild Turkey right now in everyday packages. Wild Turkey 101, we talked about this before we went live, with 2018 date codes, particularly when you get to mid-late part of the year. It punches well above the $20 to $25 price range. I mean, like it just, I'm loving it. I'm buying it anywhere I can find it. I go and I look for the codes and I grab them. I have not tried the 2018 rare breed, but I've heard the same things. Like if you can find 2018 rare breed, around the same summertime period, similar kind of thing there.
When someone's looking for a code, I know you kind of showed me on the back of this bottle. So Wild Turkey's a little different from like Buffalo Trace, where the last two numbers are going to be the year?
No. With Wild Turkey, you're going to have and the codes changed multiple times over the decades because they had bottling facilities in Kentucky, and then it went to Indiana, then it went to Arkansas, and then it went back to Kentucky. Okay, so what you're going to look for in a modern bottle is a laser code that's going to be on the glass, usually on the back if it's a pint like this. If it's a fifth, you're just going to have to kind of turn it around to find it. Yeah, it's not easy sometimes.
In the store,
yeah. Get the flashlight.
Is this blind or is he?
And if for anybody that's really interested in this, rarebird101.com, bottle codes, it'll go through it line by line. But there's a code here that starts LL. Okay, and those letters are insignificant. It's the next two. So the letters after LL, the first letter in this case is G, that's 2018, and this one is H, which would be August. So A would be January, B would be February, etc. So this particular one's a GH, and it's not open, but that's because this is like at least my second one of these pints like this, because I can't find fifths or liters yet, so I'll buy pints and half pints when I find them, because it's a great pour. But there's some older stocks going in there, and that's not a big secret. Bruce Russell had mentioned that on Reddit a few months back that was going to be happening because they were kind of low on some of the 8-year, I believe, and they were using 10-year in there in the 101.
Question for you. So if I'm looking at LL7DH, so that would be A, B, C, D. So
no, are you looking at the sticker or are you looking at the actual the bottom? Okay, so D would be 2015. So D would be 2015. And if it's got an H, then that would be August.
Okay.
So 2015.
We're looking for like a G and then a G. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Like this is an H, and this is a good one.
Okay.
So, and I would shoot maybe for
GH or past.
HI, something like that. Yeah, look for that.
That's interesting.
I don't want folks to go tater crazy on it or something. I mean,
all of a sudden they're flying off the shelf, and it's not like it's 25-year-old bourbon that they dropped in there or anything. Yeah,
it tastes like 101. It just tastes like a better 101. I guarantee you this, because here's what I did. I went and I grabbed some pints and half pints with different codes, particularly this year, but also have ones in the cabinet from 16, 17, whatever. And I just blindly, chose which ones I like best, and they ended up being this. And so I did some, digging, and this is supposed to be, some older whiskey in there. But I recommend anybody do the same. Go out and grab some. You can buy pints, half pints, whatever. You can buy minis, and they have the codes on the minis too. And set yourself up a little bit of a blind. And if you find you may prefer, I don't know, A, B, or C or something, I don't know, but you do a blind, and if you find a batch that you like and you repeat the process and you end up on the same one again, go buy that. You know?
Which what I kind of like about this is you could set up a blind tasting for like $7 and run through some of these things. You can get the little, I forget what do they call, like the mini bottles?
Like the little shooter mini bottle things.
Whatever it is, and so you could really set up a fun blind tasting and not have to spend a bunch of money, which is and
I don't know how often Wild Turkey batches. it could be that you could be sipping the same batch within a month apart or 2 months or whatever. But the point is, like you said, have a cheap run, set it up, and if one just really sticks out to you, try it again, repeat the process. If one really sticks out to you, and that's that same one again,
Yeah.
that's probably telling you that you're probably going to like, a fifth or liter of that,
Yeah, definitely. So the 101 celebration, any info on that?
Well, the problem with this year was that Campari moved from San Francisco to New York. So in that process, Wild Turkey lost some key employees. Well, I should say Campari, but they were Campari employees that were managing Wild Turkey. And there's a lot that goes into moving from across the country. So I don't know.
Things happen.
Brand new office in New York and all that. So, I don't know if all of the things that maybe they were thinking of a couple years before happened. They did put together some nice videos, some pretty hilarious ones too. If you saw the mean tweets on it, they did have some nice videos, and a lot went into those because you had the guy making the barrel and they were charring the tweets and all that.
Yeah.
They've done some. I don't know if it's they've had some tweets, they've had some Instagram posts, this type of thing. There's a lot of social media stuff. But as far as a release, there wasn't a release, unfortunately. I don't know if there's anything else planned for the rest of the year, so I can't speak for them, But I tried to do something, I had the single barrel pick that I tried to kind of acknowledge the 101 anniversary. And then a lot of patrons from my Patreon website, we all got together and we contributed samples. We contributed 16 samples for Eddie and 16 samples for Jimmy, all different. Okay. So we had 32 different samples. There might've been one or two duplicates. And then one of my patrons, James Richards, who is an excellent carpenter, excellent woodworker, he handmade these boxes, one for Jimmy and one for Eddie. And these aren't like Booker's boxes or anything. These are like colonial craftsmanship, legit boxes. Oh, that's beautiful. Cool. And you can see them on, if you go to redbird101.com, there's a post about Jimmy Russell with a 1972 1018. And I talk about that in there. I believe that was the post it was on. But anyhow, so these custom made boxes were filled with these samples. They had a big 101 on them, and they were hand delivered to Jimmy and hand delivered to Eddie. And it was just a really amazing thing. That's cool. I think that, to me, I'm satisfied. I think that the 101 anniversary, in my mind, in my heart, has been celebrated, and I think I've tried to give as much credit as I can, and I'm happy with it. As far as could Wild Turkey or Campari do something more? I mean, it's a once in a lifetime event.
Yeah.
So of course the answer is yes. You can always do more. Will they? I don't know. But here's what's coming though. The cool thing is, and I don't know if they've got anything planned, but next year will be Jimmy's 65th anniversary. That's a big deal, And then you had Diamond, and Diamond, it's, some people love it, some people hate it. It wasn't their best LE, I can tell you that. It wasn't their best release. So maybe now we've got 65 years, maybe something really cool could happen. But you've heard my thoughts on this, I think. I'm thinking, instead of coming out with this crazy LE, take and do a throwback label, 101, even make it 8-year. Yeah. And make a bunch of them, like the Beam Repeal batch. And put it out there at retail 101 prices. And maybe a premium a little bit if it's the 8-year. Okay, that's justified to add $5 more or something. And do a limited run, but do enough of them to where everybody can buy one. And then you have this LE that like people aren't flipping and stuff because they're out there for everybody, like the Beam Repeal batch. And I think that would be the ultimate limited thing for to celebrate Jimmy's 65th. Yeah,
and I'm with you. Like, I think that would be a home run if they took, and what would be really cool is kind of like with the Al Young, where how they had that retro bottle. Just take the bottle and label design of when Jimmy first started, or
Right.
around that time, that original label. Make it 8-year, make it 101. Even put a faux tax stamp on it. Everybody loves a tax strip. And you could have plenty of it.
Yeah, plenty of it.
Instead of selling 101 NAS for what's it, $25?
Yeah, $25.
Yeah, make it $35.
Yeah.
Even the $40 mark. And I feel like they have plenty of stock. They could have a really incredible batch with plenty of stock that's 8 years, age stated, in that old label. And I'm with you. I mean, we've talked about it, and I think even if they put out 30,000 bottles, I know I'm buying a case of it.
Yeah, heck yeah. And another thing, let's say they come back and say, well, Longbranch has eaten up a lot of the 8-year. We don't have enough to do that. Well, my answer would be, okay, fine. Do 101 non-age stated just like you got it now, but do it non-chill filtered, like the Jim Beam repeal batch. But don't go charging a premium if you're going to do it that way.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you're kind of taking a step out. You're kind of one less step to production. So that would be my alternative. Would be, if you can't do the 8 years, which I think they should, because that's kind of classic signature, Jimmy. But if they can't, do the throwback label. You don't have to have the 8-year, but make it non-chill filtered, and maybe have a back label where there's a story about
something about
Jimmy.
I agree. And he's been such a big proponent of the bourbon aging and kind of peaking around that 8 years, and not going too far. It's not quite Makers, where they think you go to Makers and taste, and they say this is what over oak bourbon tastes like at 12 years, and it's like, that is actually pretty good. They're not quite to that point, but they're still not big on the really high age statements. And people just love that bottle design, and it's a great bottle design. So with that, I think we talked about quite a bit, gave people a lot of good information. So let's get into a little bit of the tasting. So basically what everyone watching, what we did is we both grabbed a bottle of older Wild Turkey 8-year, and then grabbed a new bottle of Wild Turkey 101, no longer 8-year. But I'm sure there is some 8-year in there. So I believe, what'd you say you had, an 87?
83.
83.
Yeah, I got 83.
I didn't go that far back. I was going to have to crack another bottle, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So in true Wild Turkey fashion, my actual bottle, the cork disintegrated, and so it's now stored in this old Jefferson's Ocean.
Well, you got to get yourself a French press, man. That's what you do. You empty it into the French press, filter it out, and put it back in the bottle.
Yeah, but my problem was I didn't have a cap that fit in.
Well, then you have no choice.
And so I was just like, oh well. And I'd opened it at my brother-in-law's birthday. I'm like, all right, you just keep the bottle as a gift.
Hey, if you're drinking it, it doesn't really matter anyway. It's
in the bourbon with me. Yeah. So, and this is where Wild Turkey gets a lot of, I don't want to say flack, because that's probably a little more aggressive than it is, but people talk about, the drop in quality or the drop in taste, the difference in taste, not even the drop necessarily. And it's definitely there. You taste, especially when you're getting into like the 70s and early 80s, and the bourbon was probably much older than the 8-year on its statement, or just it's different, and we can get into that a little bit, but whether it's oxidation, whether it's they had better grains coming in, older oak that was used, and it was air or dried longer to make the barrels, whether that was the difference, or whether just accumulation of a bunch of different factors. There does seem to be a difference. I mean,
there is.
If you look at that, that's pretty noticeable. I'm trying to.
Definitely. Yeah. Just on mine.
Do you know offhand what the barrel entry proof was? 2-3 decades ago with Wild Turkey. I'm assuming they're like everyone else and have bumped up closer to the 125 point.
Yeah. Prior to 2004, it had always been 107. That was it. 2004, they raised it to 110. And the reason why they raised it was because they had a lot of barrels proofing down.
Mm-hmm.
And when you make your name on 101, you can't do anything with 98, you know.
Yeah.
So they had some issues. It was a serious problem because they had sales going up and they had to do something about it. And so their answer was raising entry proof. And so in 2004 they went to 110. And then in 2006 they went to 115, and that's where they're at now. So that's still relatively low.
Yeah, if you're watching this and didn't know, so you can go up to 125.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the majors are at 125. So a couple exceptions. Weeded at Buffalo Trace
114, right?
114, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Four Roses is still at 115-ish. I've got to Google.
And Beam, doesn't Beam have multiple entry proofs for their different product lines?
This is kind of off topic, but this is going to go into a post for the Booker's 30th that I'm doing. They don't have different barrel entry proofs, but the Booker's is distilled differently from everything else. Booker's distilled to 125 and goes directly into the barrel at 125.
Okay.
There's other brands, they distill up to, probably 135, water, proof it down some, then go into
the barrel. I got you. Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, I want to say Makers. I think Makers maybe 125. But yeah, if you Google Bourbonr Distillery Summary, I've got this PDF of everything in there. So it's interesting to see how that changes. But
yeah, good info.
Just right off the nose on the older one, just get a lot more dark cherry, brown sugar, and just toffee and butterscotch.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of reasons for why this is different. And, I don't want to get off the subject on the tasting if you're wanting to get into notes, but
no.
A lot of people seem to pick on Wild Turkey and say, well, I like the where the turkey's looking at you, or I like, dusty Wild Turkey. I don't like the new stuff. It tastes different. The reality of it is, what I've come to learn is that's the same for all these brands. I mean, go taste a 2000 Henry McKenna and taste one now. They're different, and you can say, oh, it's Old Bourbon. It's okay. Weller, same thing. Okay. There is something about the older whiskey, and I think Michael Beach has an excellent post on his blog. It's called Old Bourbon Flavor, actually. It's one of my favorite articles to recommend to folks. Take a look at that. He breaks it all down. He gives you a lot of the things that you've already mentioned, the older, more choice oak and water is different. And there's a lot of different reasons why, but it's more than just entry proof. It's more than just there's older whiskey in it, although I think that's a factor for all those brands as well. Like some of those Old Crow Chessman thing, it's like molasses or something, and so there's got to be some old juice in there. But there's a lot of factors that went into why Old Bourbon tastes the way it does. I don't think new or modern Wild Turkey is subpar at all. I just think it's different, just like modern McKenna is different, or just like and that's just how it is now. And I've never had Dusty Beam, but I've heard Dusty Beam is excellent. If you go back far enough, I don't know. I've never had it. But I think what I'm saying is, okay, when people get into whiskey enthusiasm, or more specifically bourbon enthusiasm, when I first started getting really enthusiastic about it, everything was Weller and Pappy. We did this and stuff, okay? And nothing against those brands because they make some great whiskey. But, they hear this chatter about, Weller Antique, Weller 12. Weller 12 is basically Pappy. And everybody runs to go get it. The reality of it is, it's what people are talking about. They've been talking about it for years. And if you go taste Weller 12 from like 10 years ago, it's not going to taste like Weller 12 that they make now, and everybody's just getting it because it says Weller 12 on it. It's the same thing with Wild Turkey, but Wild Turkey doesn't have that hype halo around it, so people just instantly think, well, only the old Wild Turkey is good. I'm like, if you could sit down and sip Old Weller and New Weller, you'd see a difference as well. But yet it doesn't get quite the backlash that Wild Turkey does. And I know you can say, well, some of it sits a Weller and this kind of thing, and this is Buffalo Trace, and there's two different facilities. Well, there's been different facilities with Wild Turkey too. So you have the new facility that opened in 2011. Okay, so the new juice coming out there. and you've had entry proof changes and all this kind of stuff. So distilleries change, and the profiles are going to change. And there's not an excess of old bourbon like there used to be, but I don't think there's anything wrong with Wild Turkey per se. If anything, I'd say that maybe in the 2000s there was some inconsistency in some of the batches where you could get a batch from 2007 or something, and then another batch from 2007 like a few months later, and they're like, wow, these are totally different. What's going on here? So there might have been some quality control things going on in the 2000s. But never bad. Not with the 101. You get into the 80, and but anyway.
Yeah,
I meandered there.
No, but good points, because I think a lot of it becomes nostalgia too, of older just always tastes better. It comes in, and I've thrown some. I was trying to pull up the notes, but I've thrown some older Wild Turkey in blind tastings versus newer Wild Turkey. There's about a 2-point difference. Now you may see bigger gaps, and if you do it if you had a really good batch of this older Wild Turkey, but I don't think the fall off is as drastic as some enthusiasts like to make it.
It's just different.
It is different. But I don't know. There is something to it. It's a different. You can pick it out. It's not the exact same, but like you said, facilities have changed. Barrel selections have changed. A lot of these things happen. Doesn't make it worse,
right?
But I still pretty consistently suggest Wild Turkey 101 to people as like a drinker. And I guess we're doing a lot of that now. We'll probably have some purchases after people hear about the codes and everything from this. But let's see. I'm going to mess up this name, but Soslan asks, is Wild Turkey using non-GMO corn? I believe they are. They promote that, actually.
I think that most of the big distilleries are using non-GMO corn.
Yeah. Actually, I was working on a post one time, and it's pretty much all of them. Because they want consistency, I think. So,
and Ian had asked a question about the funk. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah. Let's jump into that.
Okay. To me, funk is a relative term. It's not a term that you can narrow down to a definite. Okay. So what's funk to me is not going to be funk to you, and this kind of thing. And then there's also kind of like, there's funk that you experienced from Wild Turkey in the 70s, in the 80s, the 90s, going up. And there's some funk that you get in some Wild Turkey now, but it's not the same. Camp Nelson has what a lot of people are calling the Camp Nelson funk. To me, funk is kind of a relative term. It's kind of like, there is something in here. And by the way, Jimmy does not like the term funk.
He doesn't like that.
He does not like it.
Don't use it.
There is something that it's just something there that's different, that gives you a little twist that says, hey, this isn't the standard vanilla caramel thing. There's something on this oak here. It tastes like a wet forest or wet pavement, or or peanut. Like Beam has the Beam funk, which is a peanutty kind of thing. So it's relative. What I get more in the old Wild Turkey is more of an herbal, floral perfume, foresty, kind of wet, kind of barn hay funk. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
like a dusty warehouse.
Kind
of whenever I'm tasting that. Yeah.
And what I get now that someone might call a funk is like a sweet, semi-nutty vibe with like the oak has kind of a wet sweetness to it. I call it musty oak. It's not the heavy, funk herbal stuff that you might get from years before. And you get more of that funk and the modern stuff in your single barrels. So you might have a single barrel that's like, wow, this is really prominent here. This is a real dominant note here. But you might get another one where like there's none at all. It's just like, okay, this just tastes like 101 or something.
Yeah.
So to me, funk is relative. I think that it's relative to the person, and then it's relative to the expression, and then it's relative to the time the expression was bottled. So there's no one magical answer that's going to say this is the funk.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. It's I think whenever we use the term funk, it's almost like we're talking about the distinctive characteristics of that distillery, because Beam, to me, the Beam funk is like a wet cardboard. And I say that like in a nice way, because I do like it, but that's kind of what I get. And with this, it's just some of those dusty, just different woody notes that, and maybe it's just like, hey, I don't know exactly what I'm tasting, so I'm going to call it funk.
Yeah.
But not in, I think what's confusing, go back to the original question, is not in like a Jamaican rum funk where, you get like that, the dunder pits that they're using, and it's producing all kinds of different phenol or whatever it is. It's not like that. It's
No. Maybe in a single barrel. You might find a single barrel or something
randomly, but nothing like that. So somebody asked, John Watson asked, do you guys think the older wild turkey bottles are worth buying, or as a new wild turkey enthusiast, do you focus? I have my answer. I'm interested to hear what you say. For me, I would say don't spend more than, if you can splurge and do $300 on an older bottle, I think it's fun to be able to try that. I wouldn't go too much above that, and that's getting harder to do these days just because of prices. But other than that, I'd go find some old rare bird. If you can, rare breed.
Yeah. But thanks for the plug.
There's the plug right there. Yeah. Some old rare breed. What do they do? It's like RB dash, but the
03 RB?
99. The
99 is the one you want to try to find.
Yeah, that's been some of my favorite, and I've actually found some of those recently.
Yeah.
Which was random. 03 was good too, but the 99 was just great.
The 99 has it all. Yeah.
I'd put that against almost. Yeah, I'd say 95% of the old wild turkeys that I've tried.
Completely.
Some other good ones is just some old Kentucky Spirit. If you can find a good barrel of that. So that's kind of one where I do like this, because I feel like with a little bit of hunting, you don't need to go spend $350, $400 on some old bottle. Like, you can hopefully find some, or those 99s are probably going for like $100. I don't know what they would be on the secondary market, but
here's what I think. If I could give my advice to someone on that, I would, if you're going to splash down a few $100, on a wild turkey bottle, and specifically an older one, because there's good stuff out there like Decades you can find it for $100. I mean, that's a good buy, and Revival. But if you just have to get a dusty bottle, don't go crazy. Do your research, read a lot of reviews. But the two that I can tell you that I don't think that you're going to go wrong on would be a bottle of Cheesy Gold Foil. You're not going to have any regrets for that one. And in my opinion, you're not going to have any regrets on a donut. Now both of those are going to cost you $400 plus. But if you did that once a year, okay, if you said, well, this year I'm going to get me a Cheesy Gold Foil. And then, baby that thing, share it with your friends on occasion. But then after that, do what you talked about. Try to find Kentucky Spirits. They all look the same, okay? Well, from 2007 on, they all look the same. So a bottle you're going to find right now is going to look the same as a 2007, okay? You're going to have to read the neck. Look for a pre-2012 bottle. You want to find a 2007 to 2011, and you will taste often a Dusty Turkey profile if you get a good single barrel. And if not, you're going to get more of what I call the classic, the Turkey profile, which is awesome, which is something quite good. Then the other one would be, like you said, look for 03 RB rare breed. You can still find that all over the place if you just spend some time. And then every once in a while, you'll find a 99. If you find that 99, wow. And then I've actually had a few people send me messages. They found the rare breed used to be in the gift sets, and they found some batches from like 92 that the liquor store owner just had like behind a bunch of gift sets that were collecting dust because nobody wanted the gift sets, So turkey is one of those where you can actually still find some older bottles if you spend some time.
Yeah.
The supply is dwindling, but they're out there.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like it's one that isn't completely picked over. There's at least a little bit of a shot, whereas some of these other bottles, like, it's just not going to happen. Which you'll appreciate, or you'll probably be upset about this story just even more than I was. So I got one of the, I don't think it was the 375. I think it was the pint version of a RB99, and cork broke on it. Pull it out. I pour it through a sieve, and you know, I had this glass. It was like a little flip top glass thing that I had in my pantry. I'm like, well, I'll just put it in there. You know, that'll hold it well. I had forgotten I'd made hot sauce in that glass bottle before. And I mean, I washed it and ran it through the dishwasher.
Yeah.
I go to pour it the next time and I'm like, why does this taste like pepper and my mouth is burning? I basically made the best version of Fireball I think you can have.
Well, you could use it for a marinade. It'd be a damn good marinade.
I was so mad at myself after that. I'm like, you have got to be kidding. I've actually kept it around just because I'm like, sometimes I want to screw with people. I'm like, you want to try some old wild turkey here?
Well, you know, you could use it as a marinade or something, maybe, but or in a sauce. But that's pretty funny, man. That's sad, but at least it was a minimal investment. You got it at retail, right?
Like, no, yeah, I paid like $12 for it or something. Yeah. So it was more about just the losing out of good bourbon that I was more disappointed on. But no, that's great. Well, we're pretty much at an hour here, so we'll probably go ahead and wrap up. But
okay,
once again, thanks
no
for coming
man. On. I enjoyed it.
Anything else you wanted to throw in there? Any more information?
No, if anything, I just want to tell everybody thank you. This has been just a crazy year for me, a crazy good year in terms of getting support from folks. I started my blog in 2016. And, you know, I just would throw up a review every few days or a week or so, and would pick up, you know, somebody every once in a while would send me something. Never imagined it turn into, you know, having as many viewers and followers and stuff as I have now. And then I have a Patreon site where I've had folks sign up, and just since May to have like 93 patrons. Awesome. You know, so it's quite. I feel honored, you know, and I think that I owe something to these people to keep trying to write the best material I can write and provide quality content. And on top of that, I've got some barrel picks scheduled for this next year, 2019 already. And I hope to make that a fun event for these patrons that have supported me. And I just want to wish everybody a good 2019, happy 2019, happy holidays. And, you know, if anybody has any questions about any type of wild turkey release or, you know, info, history, whatever, check out my website, rarebird101.com. Send me an email, and I'll be happy to help. But thanks for having me on, Blake. It's been a good time, man.
No, it's been fun. And like I kind of said at the top, is I just enjoy the deep dive that you take into the brand. So just different things that I've missed. And so I've learned a lot from just talking with you over the last hour. So thanks again. So if you're not on his Patreon, go in and join. A lot of good information. And that's the great part about bourbon is while nobody's getting rich off of this, being able to have a little bit of something that keeps you going, a little support, be able to do some fun things like barrel picks and some fun events that's what it's all about. So, you know, bourbon is a great community. And so it's really incredible just to see how it's grown and new people have come in, people have stopped blogging. It's blogging, as most probably know, it's not always the funnest thing to do to sit down and write.
It's tough when you have a job, like you and I have day jobs, you know, and so you have to come home and you've got things you've got to do, and then you want to spend time with your family and all that, and so then you've got to sit down after that and say, you know, I need to work on a review, and it's not just typing something. You've got to seriously, you know, get some notes, and you can't just do it one time. You've got to kind of go through, you know, am I going to rate this properly? And then, like with my reviews, I don't want to just throw a score up there. So I need to kind of explain the expression or the circumstances around the expression. So you take some time to do that. And it takes a lot of energy, as you know, putting all this stuff together. So it really means a lot to have support. It really does.
Yeah, it does. And especially I'm like, man, an accounting degree doesn't really come in handy in this world. I wish I would have taken an extra English class or something, but I guess it does keep the day job going well. So.
Well, I think as long as you're honest, I think it's more important than the grammar, you know, or more important than how good of a storyteller you are, whatever. I think if you got good information like you do, you have great information on your site, good information, and you're honest, people like that. And I think you've done a very good job with that over the last 5 years. And it's sad to see some of the ones I grew up with. I say grew up with. You grew up with as an enthusiast are gone now. Sour Mash Manifesto doesn't do anything more. Red, White, and Bourbon is just completely off the map now. And you have some like you guys still around, So Stu retired. And so, but he's still writing though. He's still replicating. So
I'm glad to see him back. But
me too. It's great to have support, and I like that. We have folks like you and Breaking Bourbon and Bourbon Pursuit and Bourbon Banner and all these websites that keep things going. Whiskey Jug, all that. There's plenty of sites out there with great information. And you just have to take the time, to go out there and find it. That's all. And I'm really happy that we get supported like we do.
Yeah. Awesome. So cool. Well, I appreciate it once again. And this will probably be the last Bourbonr Live. I doubt I'll be able to make one work next week. So, but we'll definitely jump back in 2019. So thank you everyone who watched tonight. I know there's just a ton of good information. So I thought this would be a good change up from just me sitting here doing a couple of reviews and talking about some news. So, Dave, thanks again. Have a great night.
Thank you. Cheers, man.
Cheers.